Hello and welcome to Cupertino Insight, and a very special welcome to our new audience, Guild subscribers in San Jose and Cupertino, who are now watching us on channel 2B. My name is Dorothy Cornelius. I'm City Clerk for the City of Cupertino and your host for Cupertino Insight. Tonight we're going to look at a very special treat, ice skating, Mom and Me. We are going to see a portion of the Mayor's State of the City address, which was made at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon. We are going to tell you a little bit about what's available on Cupertino Channel 30. And we have two very special guests, former mayors of the City of Cupertino, Jim Jackson and Bob Meyers. But first, I'd like to start by showing you a portion of Mayor Johnson's address.
My comments today address the subject of change. It's a topic that I thought of over a year ago in anticipation of being here one day, and I wish I'd written it a year ago instead of last night. But it's a topic that's fascinated me for a long time, and it's a topic that has given a lot of people a lot of problems. Some people welcome change, and for many, wherever they live, they oppose it. And early in my career, I was amazed at how difficult it was for people to adapt to changing conditions, whether they were in their teens or early 20s or whatever age. And I suppose it's been that way throughout history. And on that point, I'd like to read a letter that was written over 150 years ago. Dear President Andrew Jackson, the canal system of this country is being threatened by the spread of a new form of transportation known as railroads. Where's Rod Dearden? He should. The federal government must preserve the canals for the following reasons. Number one, as canal boats are supplanted by railroads, serious unemployment will result. Captains, cooks, drivers, repairmen, and lock tenders will be left without a means of livelihood, not to mention the numerous farmers now employed in growing hay for the horses. 2, boat builders will suffer, and tow line and whip and harness makers would be left destitute. 3, canal boats are absolutely essential to the defense of the United States. In the event of the expected trouble with England, the Erie Canal would be the only means by which we would move the supplies so vital to waging modern warfare. As you know, Mr. President, railroad carriages are pulled at the enormous speed of 15 miles per hour by engines which, in endangering the life and limbs of passengers, roar and snort their way through the countryside, setting fire to crops, scaring the livestock, and frightening women and children. The Almighty certainly never intended that people should move at such breakneck speeds. This was signed on April 1829 by the then governor of New York, Martin Van Buren. Well, somehow we made it to today, and somehow we'll make it through the next 15 years, beyond the 20th century, years in which events will move at an ever-accelerating pace. And I'd like to spend a few minutes of my time before I move into the heart of my talk discussing how does one really judge the greatness of a city. It's something that we rarely take time out and think about. Today there are many people that are alarmed at the scale and speed of building that's occurring in Santa Clara Valley. Last week I received an anonymous note from a city resident that stated, and I quote, "Have the leaders of this lovely community lost their senses, or just seeing if they can beat San Jose to self-destruction?" Well, there are people that feel that way. They're confused and concerned about the change that has occurred. And the city of Cupertino is growing. And with this growth are the concerns of a citizenry increasingly alarmed at the symptoms that might occur. The traffic, the pollution, the potential ugliness, the soaring rates that can occur, and the increased crime that sometimes comes along with change. There are those that fear growth and see change occurring at the expense of a rural culture that Cupertino uniquely holds on to. And there are those of us, myself included, that fear the planners, the architects, and developers who have brought change to a community, sometimes only to quickly disappear to their homes in Palm Springs or Atherton, never to be seen again. In all fairness, people like Burl Leonard, who is not here at the moment, but he would probably argue that he's seen more councilmen disappear than developers. So Granted, there are a lot of buildings today that are more interesting and perhaps more beautiful than the predecessors, but they should hardly be less so. Our planning process today in the city has evolved to protect us throughout a changing environment. We have a 4-tiered process today that includes the planning staff, the Architectural Site and Control Committee, the Planning Commission, the City Council, all of which operate under the guidelines of the city's general plan, put in place to maintain the standards set during the public debate and involvement that often occur. I've recently read, quote, "Great cities are not remembered for their restaurants, department stores, banks, parties, whatever. They are remembered and loved for the artistic beauty they spawned and the degree to which they encouraged the liberation of the human spirit," end quote. Such cities, as just described, are carefully grown, and they're planned on a long-term basis and not as a short-term investment. If one can only look beyond De Anza Boulevard and Stevens Creek at rush hour, and this can be difficult, one can see the makings of a truly cultivated city in the Bay Area. We can boast of the best community colleges in California, De Anza College. We can boast of fantastic entertainment facilities, especially Flint Center, one of the finest school systems in the state, and the finest shopping centers on the West Coast. These seeds of greatness were planted by such remarkable individuals as Burl Leonard, Will Lester, Walter Ward, Ann Unger, Ken Manning, John Vidovich, Juanita McLaren, and there are others, some of whom are here today. Cupertino is fortunate, and indeed protected by these individuals who have helped design our city. These are people committed to our city and live in our city. These are people who help shelter us from the politicalization of urbanization. And from these people, while change does occur and other people come and go, these people are with us on a constant basis. The changing nature of a city must constantly be appraised and the natural characteristics defined. Shifts in the emphasis of the urban economy and in the service and the functions it performs requires adjustments in the living habits of the people, the land use, and the transportation if they are to continue as favorable environments in which to live and which to work. Our strongest assets are those of you gathered here in this room today who have been deeply involved and concerned with our community. The general plan of the city reflects your concerns, your involvement, and it becomes a guide for the future growth and development of the community. The greatness of Cupertino will be determined by the coordinated efforts in the future of the City Council, the planning staff, Chamber of Commerce, combined with the enlightened and enthusiastic support of all of our citizens. In terms of recent changes, I thought it would be helpful to review what has occurred. Time passes by so quickly that the most valuable contribution of a State of Anything address is to serve as a reminder of where we've been and where we've gone during the last year. Briefly, the following represents a list of perhaps our accomplishments, depending upon your frame of reference, or actions that have been initiated over the last year. And these are not in order of importance, by the way. First, Seven Springs Ranch, the largest housing development project in years, over 10 years in fact, which will provide over 400 top quality residential units. There's concern over the traffic this will generate, and it's my hope, and I'm convinced that the council and the planning staff has put in the proper measures to ensure that the traffic will be adequately handled by the time the project is completed. Civic Center, a fairly new development. We have recently approved the remodeling of City Hall and the expansion of the library. Both are projects which are long overdue, and the nice thing about this is that they're projects that could be rapidly completed within an 18 to 24-month time frame. The Rental Housing Committee report. The City Council has accepted and will begin implementation of a report prepared by this committee that will establish an information and referral service as well as a volunteer mediation process designed many, if not all, of the rental housing issues that we have in this city. Town Center, an exciting project that will provide over 600,000 square feet of terraced office space, residential units, a 240-unit hotel, and best of all, 6 acres of open space, including a plaza and an amphitheater. We've also recently approved and are moving towards a smoking ordinance following upon the action of many cities in Northern and Southern California. The council has agreed to draft and to approve an ordinance that restricts smoking in public places and the workplace. Vallco Park. Important for everybody to understand that a major reason for Cupertino's economic success today is Vallco Park. And they have received approval for a major multi-use complex that will include a first-class hotel so badly needed in this area. And finally, Measure A. This was an overwhelming success in Cupertino and certainly in the county in general. Cupertino, I believe, stands to gain the most from Measure A, the half-cent sales tax for road improvements, which will ensure the completion of 85. Looking forward, it also pays to think about what the major issues are going to be for 85. And the city staff can... There are no promises here.
The mayor continues to discuss major issues of Cupertino and changes that have occurred in the last few years. Issues he talks about include traffic, housing, office space, and communication. The State of the City address in its entirety can be seen on Channel 30, February 6th at 7 p.m. Now, Jim and Bob, could you share with us your impressions of Phil's speech? Jim?
Well, okay, I liked the speech, and particularly I liked the rather upbeat tone and the tone of looking at something more to a city than just its physical attributes, the spirit, the artistic quality, what we will leave to our children who either come back to Cupertino or grow up in Cupertino. And I like that tone of it very much. Very few council members, mayors really talk about that in sort of intangible quality about a city. And that was, I think, the very best part of the speech from my standpoint.
It's nice. The heritage is important.
Very much. I believe in that.
I think I would second that, Dorothy. But one of the things that I think most mayors and councilmen don't end up talking about that aspect of it for is because they're too busy battling the daily activities that they have. And when Jim and I were on the council, we went through a period of rapid growth in Cupertino as well. And we were trying to wrestle with what we did facing those issues at that time. And I think that's Phil's trying to say that that isn't just the issues you have to look at. Is how does the city grow and become a great city other than its physical natures. But I'd like to make one quick comment in that I think Governor Van Buren would be very pleased that we have returned to the very slow speeds, much lower than 15 miles an hour as we pass through Cupertino daily and evening.
No, but I think it's unintentional this time.
We won't frighten many horses with the speeds of the traffic in Cupertino.
That's true, I know. I'm part of it. Bob, how do you feel that the city has changed since you were mayor?
Well, I told Jim earlier, and this is maybe lighthearted again, that it probably changed from the better as soon as we left the council.
I think you would get some disagreement in the city.
I think there's been a transition in the city since we left. It's been now almost 5 years since we both left office. And it's probably not a thing which would have not occurred even if we had stayed. I think cities do change as they mature. We do see a change in how we're approaching things. We understand we put on certain limitations to prevent chaotic growth. And I think we tried to do that when we were on the council. And then you see what happens as the growth occurs, and you find out maybe you were a little bit more restrictive than you needed to be. And so you take a different approach at it and you look at it in a different insight. So I think the change that has occurred is that it's been densifying perhaps a little more than when we were there, but I'm not sure that it wouldn't have densified in the same way if we had stayed.
And you, Jim, how do you feel
I
about
basically
it?
agree very much with what Bob has said. I think we're seeing the continuation of many of the controls that we've placed on there, but once you consolidate your controls and you have a general plan, then you start allowing what is permissible under that general plan to take place. And I think the densification is a natural result both of what we've tried to do in our zoning and our general plan, and simply the result of the economic strength in Santa Clara County and Cupertino as a kind of crossroads in a high-tech center. So it would have been hard to prevent that.
You have both been on council and been mayors, and now you are no longer on council, so perhaps you have a little different perspective than you did previously. What do you see as major issues facing Cupertino now?
I think the top three issues facing Cupertino are traffic, and then comes traffic, and then the third issue is traffic.
You're saying nothing's changed.
In that sense, nothing has really changed. And I don't know that in the few years ahead it is really going to change. I think we all hope that as soon as Highway 85 ultimately goes through, possibly even in our lifetimes, that will make some difference. But it won't solve the problem. The problem is our urban sprawl and the fact that there are so many local places where people drive to work. We all concentrate on the single passenger automobile. That is going to be an ongoing problem that we'll just face for years to come. So I suppose then in the second categories in would be how to set a quality of life that accommodates ourselves to the traffic and to the heavy transportation that we have. And that's the kind of challenge that the present council is facing, setting a good quality of life. And I think they're doing a good job.
Oh, that's nice. And you, Bob?
Well, I think the traffic issue is a big issue. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't maybe make it traffic, because I think there is one other issue, and Phil in his speech in other areas hit on it, in that there is a solid waste problem that this county's facing. And this city in particular is facing it more quickly than other portions. And it's what to do with our garbage that we generate. And we have tried different things. We have tried to recycle and reduce our production of garbage, but it still ends up there's a lot of trash that has to be put somewhere. And we wrestled with that last year and didn't quite make it. We made a decision which says we didn't want some dump in our facility.
We didn't want it in our backyard.
And I think that's going to come back and haunt us in the future.
Oh. One of the things Phil did mention was Vallco and the possibility of a major multi-story hotel. That will certainly have an impact on the community. Bob, we'll start with you. How do you feel about having a multi-story hotel in Cupertino?
Well, when we were on the council, we did approve plans for a multi-story hotel in Vallco at the time. I believe it was 11 stories, wasn't it, Jim?
Yes.
And even at the time, that gave me some tough feelings, not because of the height of it, because I think the height was adequate and would have worked fine. I was concerned about the footprint of the hotel. I didn't think it had enough land space. I don't know how big of a hotel they're talking about now. Is it 15 stories, 12 stories, or whatever it is? Those things have to be looked at, I think, on their own merit and see what they have. I've liked to have said in the past, some people gave us comments in the past about keeping our city like a university city, a college city, and but then I thought about that and I said, think of all the great universities we have in this country and throughout the world, and most of them have multi-story buildings. Now, maybe they're not 40 stories. I don't know.
Jim, how would you feel about that?
I agree with the concept of having a hotel, a major hotel in Cupertino. The size, I think, will leave to the council, and that's a nice benefit of being off the council. I can criticize them if it's too big or too high, but the concept of having a multi-story hotel is, I think, going to be very good for the general life of the community. It gives us a place for meeting places, major banquets, visitors coming in, and I think it'll just really be a good focal point for Cupertino, and I'm anxious to see it come about.
So am I. I think it will be an asset to Cupertino. I want to thank both of you very much for being here today. It's been a while since I've seen you, and it's very good to see you two again.
Been a pleasure.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the things Mayor Johnson does mention also is the need for communication between city government and the citizens. One of the major ways of communication is via television, in this case particularly Channel 30. Now I'd like to show you a segment of some of the things available on Channel 30 and its potential programs.
What we're going to do, as I said, show you 9 new subjects, start all over again, with a pot, of course, starting at 1700. We need subjects for that, and for those subjects, let's take a look together.
Limit 1 plate per customer. Please allow 6 to 8 weeks for delivery.
Began, among other things, last year what we call Project Bible, and we have designed a new thing called the book. We've had over 1 million copies of it sold. It's a runaway bestseller, to say the least.
Please don't let me down, begging, please don't make a fool of me.
Number 25, modification of the approved development plan.
I think that Cupertino is a great example of municipal
key items are
programming and
26.
municipal access. It seems as though there's a sufficient number of hours of programming, for one thing, that people know that the channel exists and that it has an identity.
Well, one of the requirements for United Cable in the franchise approval was that there be institutional networks, one of which turned out to be Channel 30, which is our government channel. The purpose was to cablecast programs and informational items to the public so that they could become more aware of what's going on in the city with their city government.
I think that the programming is of real high quality, the programming that I've seen. And I think that it provides real good service to the community. So I think if you look at those, you could probably say that Cupertino's channel is a, quote, success.
I think the council supports Channel 30 because we have set as one of our goals to communicate better with the community, to involve them, to get things across to them, to allow the community to have input.
Well, I particularly enjoy Channel 30 and think it's important because it helps me be active as a citizen, even though I may not be able to attend city council meetings, for instance, or planning commission meetings. I still feel as though I can be informed.
We are cablecasting right now our city council meetings and planning commission meetings, which enables people to sit in the comfort of their own home and watch rather than sit for 3 or 4 hours in city council chamber.
City council meetings, I think, are an invaluable service for people at home. And I know the first reaction on the part of people, staff in a city, for instance, is, no one's going to watch a city council meeting. It's really boring. But I think that Cupertino's experience, and I know our experience in Mountain View, has been very different. And in fact, that's the one program that the city does that people will always tune into because some point in the year they're going to have something that interests them going on in a council meeting.
I think at our last council meeting, or 2 or 3 council meetings ago, we reached a first. A lady came in to the council meeting saying she had been watching the meeting at home, saw what was on the agenda or heard what was on the agenda and wanted to have something to say about it, so she came right down here to tell us about it. And I think that's great, and I'd like to see more of it.
The promise of municipal programming is that it should involve more people in a community in their local government. And I think we're seeing that happen as more and more governments get involved in municipal programming and as governments get more sophisticated about what they want to put out and what looks good.
We also have the magazine format show, which covers other things besides strictly council-type actions, things of just general interest to the community. We also have the character generator that is operating 24 hours a day, giving such things as schedule of meetings, recreation programs that are currently available.
And the whole thing about government is it's a response type of a situation. Governments can't operate in a vacuum without citizen input.
I agree that cities cannot act in a vacuum, and I think that the Channel 30 and the programs that are on it are another way of communicating with the residents of Cupertino.
The way it has affected me personally as a viewer is that I'm able to follow, through the Planning Commission and then subsequent actions of the council, the way zoning affects my own neighborhood, for instance. There have been particular uses of land in my neighborhood that I've been interested in. I've been able to follow that through the Channel 30 that I might not have been able to otherwise. So I'm able to be aware of what's happening in my neighborhood and feel like I'm a participant.
I think Channel 30 or any municipal channel has the opportunity to give the people a lot of information that really will help them dealing with their city government. And they can do it in such a way that the people can enjoy learning about it.
Monday night football is strong competition for, say, city council meetings. But I think little by little, people are finding things of interest. They're tired of some of the commercial TV, and they're learning that they can find out more about their community by watching Channel 30.
Everywhere we go, everywhere council members go, they're running into people who have seen Insight or a planning commission or a council meeting and have really enjoyed it. So I'm very excited and enthusiastic about the future of Channel 30. I think that people will continue to get a good benefit out of it.
Try it, you'll like it.
The city's Cable TV Advisory Committee has prepared a survey which will be mailed to you in your February issue of the Cupertino Scene. we would like you very much to complete it. Just fold it over, staple it inside what is usually reserved for your sound-off reply, and mail it back to City Hall. It will go postage free. This is your opportunity to tell us what you would like to see on this channel. As you know, the winter Parks and Recreation programs are underway. One is a very, very fine program called Mom and Me Ice Skating. Let's take a look at that now. The class is held every Thursday at the Ice Chalet at Vallco Park. You can still register by calling the Parks and Recreation Department 253-2060 or stopping by their office at McClellan Ranch Park. CPR classes are offered through the Parks and Recreation Department and are held February 11th and 13th. Classes include 1- and 2-person CPR, obstructed airway procedures, and infant CPR. A second session will be held on March 11th and 13th. Contact Parks and Recreation for more information. Thank you for watching Cupertino Insight. See you in 2 weeks.